Well, welcome back to Northwest Sports Tonight. It's time to welcome in Bryan Levesque, who is the guru of GSHFootball.com and follows as an encyclopedia on GSHL. Bryan, how are you tonight?
Doing good, Ron. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I was talking to a coach in the GSHL, and we went over the scores. Skyview 61, Evergreen 9, Camas 59, Heritage 6, Mountain View 45, Kelso Zip, Prairie 58, Hudson's Bay nothing, Columbia River 46, Fort Vancouver nothing. I can go on and on. Lopsided games, one-sided affairs, not even competitive games sometimes. What's going on in the disparity in GSHL football? Some great teams, the haves and have-nots. Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much. This is probably one of the worst years possibly ever as far as having some really good teams and some really, you don't want to say they're bad, but they're just not very good teams at this for various reasons, whether they're young, they're injured, but then this weekend, of course, and unfortunately I'd like to say it was just this weekend where it just happened to do that, but we have haves and have-nots, but there's even a couple levels within those, and from each level to the next level, so you have your level 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Each level is going to crush the other level. So almost every week we end up with a lot of these type of games. So, there's a lot of factors I think go into it, but we just try to hope the other teams can grab those bootstraps and get better.
Well, yeah, I think, and you hope that's the case. Is there anything to realignment or school population problems where you have teams like Fort Vancouver that just don't have a lot of players and a lot of players that are competitive, not because anything more than the numbers are down there?
Well, they do break them up into, the WIA, Oregon, a lot of the high schools, they break them up into levels based on the student population numbers. Unfortunately, with one of the things that sports nowadays, and it's trickling down to youth sports, just like at the college level where you look at, a Texas, a Oklahoma, USC, when you talk about the arms races that those guys have versus Oregon State and Washington State even having to struggle with what Oregon can do now and what Washington could do being in Seattle. You have that with, the socioeconomic stuff that go into the different neighborhoods that the schools are in.
Sure.
And the kids can, train year-round for football. Other ones, they can't train year-round for football. Football is such a numbers game. You get 150 kids that turn out at Skyview and Camas. You get 30 that turn out at Fort Vancouver. Those 30 at Fort Vancouver, maybe 3 or 4 of them have really been training year-round. Out at Camas, of the 150, 100 of them have been training year-round. You're going to have it's going to be hard to beat that team.
Should Fort Vancouver schools like it when they have 30 players turn out? Maybe they shouldn't play a varsity schedule.
I don't know. I honestly think this year, you look at Fort and Bay, they had turnover in coaching. I don't think this can happen year in and year out. Some of the schools like Camas and Mountain View, they were right on the edge of being up another level. And so, I don't know. If you're going to change all of it, if you're going to have the states come in and take in other factors where it's not just how many kids go to your school, but you look at,
look beyond that.
Influences. Yeah, but then, that's a box that if you open that up, then
that can be subjective. It can be difficult to harness.
You and that CLU jumping in, and I think it's tough. All of a sudden, you say, "Well, you guys are too poor, or you're too this, or you're too that." It's hard. It's a hard thing to do, and unfortunately, we just hope that you do the best you can, and hope that the other schools can get better. You're glad to have a Skyview as good as they are. And the other thing, too, is, it's easy to transfer around. The schools try to lock down that, but unfortunately, nowadays, it's, maybe it's not as easy to transfer your kid into a school, but it's easy for a parent to put their house up for sale and go rent another house for the next 2 years while their kid goes to school.
Sure.
They move them out of Fort, and they're going to Skyview. Stuff like that happens as well, and that nobody's breaking any rules, nobody's doing anything. But stuff like that, it didn't happen 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Stuff like that happens now. There's just so many things that add up. We just thankful we have a good game in Woodland Washougal, and look for the.
That was a good game
out of it.
Real quick, we're short on time. Game of the week this week in the GSHL on Friday.
There's two of them. The 2A level, again, with Woodland's big win. They're hosting Hawkinson, who's also undefeated in league. If Woodland wins, they wrap up the 2A championship. And again, coming off of Woodland went 0-9 last year. Again, at the 2A level, it's a little bit different. That truly fluctuates. Teams can be good one year, bad the next. The upper levels, it's kind of, they stay good for long periods of time and bad for long periods of time. But at the 4A level, Battleground, the 5 o'clock game on 1550 is going to be Battleground at Heritage. If Battleground wins that game, pending the Heritage Evergreen game, the Battleground's probably going to lock up that third playoff spot out of the 4A. So that's the winner of that game has the inside track at making the playoffs. So that's probably what we will determine our game of the week. But there's two big games: Hawkinson at Woodland and Battleground at Heritage, which is on 1550 at 5 o'clock.
Right on. We'll look forward to that in the broadcast. Brian, we'll talk to you later in the week. Bryan Levesque, who is with GSHLFootball.com, and good answers to my questions about the disparity in scoring. It is something that's difficult to change the culture in a conference when you want the Fort Vancouvers of the world to do well, but if they've only got 35 players turning out, you got 150 at Skyview. I mean, it's like David versus Goliath every week, and it makes it difficult. That's been the case at some PIL schools in the past, Dylan, where they haven't had turnouts.
Well, and the problem with the PIL in recent years is that if you go back 5 years, Oregon was 1A, 2A, 3A, or 4A. That was it. And then they switched it up to the 6A system because of the enrollment disparity. And now you've got three levels of PIL. You've got 4A PIL, 5A PIL, which is where most of the schools are, and then 6A where you've got Grant and Lincoln. It's just a huge mess to try to put it all together at the end of the year. And then every team makes the playoffs. It's just.
But you want every school to have pride, to feel like they can compete. And if a school like Fort Vancouver, you go up before the game and you say, hey, we know you're better. Try to take it easy on us. That's just not good.
No, I mean, and the other thing, too, is you want to have a rivalry, too. I mean, that's one of the best things about high school sports is when you get a good rivalry going.
Absolutely.
In the PIL, a rivalry for a long time was Benton and Jefferson. They always went at it in football and in basketball as well. Lincoln and Jefferson was also rival.
Good rivalry.
Grant and Lincoln as well. I mean, that just makes a league that much more interesting.